Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Age Better, where each week we take a deep dive into all the ways we can feel better, look better, live better, and age better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. Today, we're stepping into the world of stepping out. Yep, we're talking about walking. But first, I have to mention this truly concerning trend that I hope this episode will help to reverse. Walking in the U.S. saw a staggering decline starting in 2020, influenced by the stay-at-home rules caused by the pandemic, sure. And then more people were working remotely, and now many of them working in a hybrid situation. So it's really not gotten any better. According to some new studies that have just come out, the national annual average of daily walking fell by almost 40% from 2019 to 2022. That is seriously not okay. So how can we reverse this trend? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today with my guest, Joyce Shulman, who has been on the show a few times already, who will shed light on the mind-blowing benefits of taking a simple walk for your body, mind, and spirit, and how it can absolutely, positively help you to age better. Joyce Shulman is the co-founder of 99 Walks. There will be links in the show notes, and the author of several books, including her newest one, Why Walk? In the conversation that's coming up, Joyce shares insights and expertise on the incredible benefits of taking a walk. She is truly a walking guru. And please make sure you hit the follow button so you don't miss next week's episode when my guest is Janet Sirotto, who wrote the lead story for Cosmo's special issue on sex after 60, just in time for Valentine's Day. Okay, so let's get this conversation started. But first, why not pop in your earbuds and go for a walk while you listen to this chat about walking? Stay tuned. Hi, Joyce. How are you? Welcome back to the show. You know, this is, I believe, your third time on the show, and really fun. You are the first guest to be on the new podcast, has a new name. As of last week, it was called Gruff Talk, How to Age Better. And now it's called Age Better with Barbara Hannah Grufferman. So welcome back, Joyce.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be part of this new adventure.
Oh, I know. It's really, really exciting. I mean, Gruff Talk has been around for over 2 years, and we've done almost 100 episodes and with some really incredible guests like you and experts. And so that will just continue to happen, of course, but with a new name. And I just, you know, it's so funny. As I get older, I just want to simplify my life a little bit more and just have more clarity and everything I do. So that's why I kind of pared back and just called it what it is, Age Better. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, you've been on the show before, as I said, Joyce, and talking about walking and all the health and mental and spiritual benefits of walking and having a walking practice. And so, of course, I think a lot of the audience already knows about you, and hopefully they started following you after hearing you and doing your virtual weekly walks. And that's, in fact, how you and I first met. You had me as a guest well over a year ago on your show, which was so much fun. But since we're going to be talking about walking, why don't we do a little bit of a warm-up? Okay, so just tell us, why walking? Why this passion for walking? And why and how did you and your husband turn this passion for walking into an actual business? And tell us about that.
So walking, as you know, has always been a part of my life. And you and I have talked offline about what it is that women need to do to keep themselves as healthy and well as they can. And one of the questions that people ask me often is walking enough? I'm sure we'll come back to this.
We will.
And I'm sure. For me, I have always been really active. My mother was a professional dancer. I danced a lot as a kid. I discovered weightlifting as a 20-something-year-old. Now I play pickleball.
Be careful with pickleball. A lot of accidents, a lot of injuries. Be careful.
Yeah. So the one constant throughout my life has been my walking practice. And I realize in retrospect, it is the single thing that has kind of kept me grounded and kept me well and kept everything working. So my passion for walking is truly, it's kind of the centering principle, honestly, which sounds like a little bit of an overstatement, but it's kind of the centering principle of my active and mental and, as you said, spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it comes from. It's just been part of my life since I was a teenager. And how we came to the idea of turning it into a business, I had a practice for a while, which I still do, of walking with friends. We probably could talk for an hour just about the power of walking with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I came home from a walk, and my husband, he and I have been partners, entrepreneurial partners for 20 some odd years, as well as partners. And he looked at me and he goes, maybe there's something to this walking thing. Well, yes, dear, I think so too. And he said, no, I mean as a business. And I said, I don't see it. Like, I don't get that. And he's like, I don't know. I think there's something there. And we talked about it off and on for several weeks, several months. And then we were, surprise, on a walk. And it was early in the morning. We were on vacation. We were in Maui. Kids were sleeping, and we went out for a long morning walk. And we kind of came up with this concept that ultimately became 99 Walks.
Really incredible. And there will be a link to 99 Walks again in the show notes for everyone who hasn't yet kind of started to follow you, Joyce, can do so. And just tell us a little bit about what 99 Walks offers.
So 99 Walks is a social fitness app focused on women, wellness, and walking. And our core mission is to get 1 million women walking.
Mm-hmm.
And we have app walk tracking and goal setting. And then for our members who crush their monthly goal, and people set their own goals, I'm all about the power of setting your own goals. People who crush their monthly goals, and most of our members do, we send them a skinny cuff bracelet engraved with the theme of the month.
It's so great.
It's a little prize.
Listen, Joyce, that I'm a runner. I'm a walker, of course, but I'm also a runner. And I actually do the Jeff Galloway run walk program. So I combine the best of both.
Uh-huh.
But I really do have a practice of taking walks as well, having nothing at all to do with my intended run. But I love running races because you get a medal at the end. Not for all races, but for many. And so I totally get the psychological motivation behind getting a bracelet when you hit your goal, whatever the goal is. And it's also, as you just pointed out, it's really so important that it's your goal. Like, you're competing with yourself. You shouldn't be competing with others. I mean, at least that's how I feel about anything that I do. I am competitive, but it's really with myself. But let's get to why I really invited you on the show, Tim. I just love having you on because you've become a friend. We always have lots to talk about, both before we start recording, during the recording, after the recording, and then everything in between. But you have written several books already. And again, there will be links to those books, but you just came out with a new book, which I really, really love. I read most of it on a plane trip last week. And it's called, I'm holding it up for those of you who are watching, but if you're not, it's called Why Walk. And there's a really great photo of Joyce there, like really kind of strutting her stuff, like, yeah, I'm going to do this walk. And with all of your books, you always have some great research. And that's why I really like reading them and having you on the show. I mean, you really are a walking guru. So for this book, it is the most current. Did you learn anything new? Is there any new research that you didn't know before? Anything surprising that you want to share with us that we should know about?
Barbara, I learned so much. And one of the great challenges actually with this book, the reason why it took 3 years for me to get it done, and I finally just had to stop, was because the research keeps coming.
Yeah, it can get overwhelming. I totally agree. And actually, that's why I love, and I'm sorry for interrupting you. I do that so well and so often. That's why I love having a podcast, because you can get the new research out quickly by getting the expert guest on, whoever that expert is. Because and that's a wonderful thing, but can also be very confusing and a bit overwhelming. So I always try to kind of cut through the noise and get to what's really so important, as do you with your books. But please continue.
So I would say two of the things that I didn't know with the kind of depth that I discovered through my research is the impact of walking on our brain health. Now, I knew that walking reduces our cortisol, improves our creativity, helps our brains work better, but I didn't know how powerful walking was to help the actual structure of our brains. And that becomes so important as we age because we lose between 1% and 3% of the gray matter of our brain every year. And that's a lot of brain power. Now, that's an average. That's not everybody, all the things, but on average. And that leads to all kinds of things that we don't want. So the research that shows that a regular walking practice not only can help slow down that deterioration, but can actually help build additional gray matter, that's like the functioning part of your brain, was so interesting to me. Like I could just geek out on that stuff all the time. And then the even more recent research is about the white matter of our brains, which is sort of the scaffolding that holds everything together and helps to move messages from one part of our brain to the other. Walking is super protective and strengthening for the white matter of our brains too. So kind of that level of geeking out on brain health, I just love.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, you do cover all of the physical benefits, and there are so many to just moving your body at all, but specifically to walking and having an intended walking practice, which you have and I have, and I hope that a lot of the listeners do too, or certainly will have once they've finished listening to this. But, you do talk about how it's so important for our brain health, but so are some other forms of exercise, as new studies have shown. For example, strength training, resistance training, which you do. I mean, you're a proponent of that as well. Certainly running, as I do, I mentioned before. But, so walking isn't the only one. So what do you recommend to people that they do to really make sure that their brain health is being focused on with walking? Should it be just walking, or what do you recommend?
As you said, I'm a tremendous proponent of resistance training. And I don't mean resistance bands. I mean picking up and putting down heavy things and really challenging yourself. Especially as women, we need it for our muscles. We need it for our bone health. I could not get higher up on that soapbox. And
I agree
running,
with
of
you.
course, if your body likes to run, some bodies love to run and some bodies don't really like to run. It's so interesting. And one of the things that always concerns me is sending people messages that you have to do everything or why bother, right? So I think we have to be careful when we talk to people. It's all good. All movement is good. I think weight training, resistance training is critical. Cardiovascular training at that higher level you get when you run or bike or whatever it is that gets you up into that higher level, totally critical. However, doing anything helps a lot. So for the people out there who are like, oh, if I don't run and I don't lift weights and I don't walk and I don't do all the things, I can't do it all, so why bother? I will say, lace up your sneakers and take a walk because you get so many benefits just from that. And then what you see so often with people is once they get moving and sort of get back into their bodies, other things start to open up.
Yeah, I've always said that, Joyce. And that's a big part of it. I call, when I decided to start running when I turned 50, and there's a whole backstory there, which I won't get into now, but I did start running then and walking more and doing everything right for myself. I call that my foundation habit, because once I started to make that a habit, because it was a regular thing, not a one-off thing, other habits formed. I was eating better because I wanted to be better at running and walking. I started sleeping better. And as we know, that is so critical for overall health and wellness, and also very important to brain health too, as we're now learning more about. Yeah, so You're so right. It's like other things will fall into place. And we don't have to do everything at once. See, that's where I think, right? Don't you find that people can get overwhelmed? You're right. Just going out
Absolutely.
for a walk. And here, I just want to point out something. Just today, I got an email from the Harvard Medical School newsletter, and there was a study in there that talked about, and I had seen something like it before, but it was all about how, let's take me as an example. So I run several times a week. I run 3 to 4 times a week, an hour, or if I'm training for a marathon or something, even more than that. But then the rest of the day, I could, I'm not saying I do, I could, and this is very typical, just kind of stay at my desk and do what I'm doing, working or whatever I have to do. And maybe even for 10 hours of the day, not be moving much, right? Because of my life and my work and what have you. But in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, but that's okay because I ran for an hour today or yesterday or tomorrow. But guess what? It is not okay. It is not okay. There's a higher risk for developing dementia the more you sit and don't move, even if you are an exerciser. That's the mind-blowing thing about that study. And so getting back to your recommendation here is, so what's the solution? And it's something that Gretchen Reynolds, who was at the New York Times and now is at the Washington Post, she's been on several times, as have you. And she is a big proponent and has studied the research behind exercise snacks, where you can get up and take, it doesn't have to be an hour walk. It can be a 10-minute walk, like say after each meal or walking your dog. But it has to be throughout the day is really the point to really get the maximum benefits, I think, in the bigger picture sense. What do you say about that?
Yeah, 100%. And some of the research shows that even 5 minutes, right? I'm going to keep dialing it back because everything
Gretchen
counts.
Reynolds even came on and said 2 to 3 minutes. Like studies have shown 2 to 3 minutes can not only help with the brain, but also lower your risk for certain cancers. But it has to be kind of every day. Who can't do 2 to 3 minutes? You can.
Yeah, the research around walking after meals,
Yes.
that research is really interesting. So walking after a meal, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, has a disproportionately positive impact on your blood sugar levels than it should, meaning you're just going to use so much of that blood sugar, of that glucose for that 10-minute walk. And you would think that, okay, then that's going to be the benefit, reducing your blood sugar by that much that your body needs to do that 10-minute walk. But it's not so. For whatever reason, and they're not entirely sure what the mechanism is, but for whatever reason, that 10-minute walk has a disproportionately fabulous impact on your blood sugar levels. So like our grandmothers were right? Finish your meal and take an evening walk.
Yes, exactly right. And I follow very, very closely and have for a couple of years now, Dan Buettner, who does the Blue Zones. And it's just really intriguing what they eat, how they move, and how they move, which is really the topic of today's talk, is it's throughout the day. They don't do like an intended exercise like I do. I'm going to go out and run for an hour or 5 miles. They just as part of their life, they just walk, they bend down, they stand up, they go go visit a neighbor. They're constantly moving. And that is part of their successful aging. No question about it. No question.
I'll tell you an interesting thing, which is sort of off topic, but I'm going to chat about it anyway. So we have a series of walking classes in our app. We actually have 2 apps. We do a series of walking classes. And sometimes in those walking classes, we will encourage our customers, our clients, to do squats, air squats, right?
The best thing in the world.
Okay, you ready for the data? When we put the word squat in the title of the class, nobody takes it. I don't mean nobody takes it, but the
relatively
numbers,
few.
It is 60% poorer performing than the titles without. And I'm like, okay, ladies, because our audience, our community is almost all women, not entirely, but mostly. Squats, that is sitting down and standing up. That is all a squat is.
Yep.
Would you
It's
not like
functional
to do that?
movement. I mean,
Yes. Would you not like to be able to sit down and stand up under your own power for the rest of your flippin' life? So that sort of goes to this idea of it's just part of our life. It's just finding movement patterns that work for our bodies and that are things that we do. Sit down and stand
yeah.
up a lot. Don't just sit
Yeah,
down.
yeah, exactly right. Because I've taken these exercise snacks very seriously since I saw that research and discussed it with Gretchen Reynolds. And this was last year, early last year. So it's been over a year already. And, I have incorporated that. Like we're recording now, we're chatting, and eventually this conversation, sadly, will end until the next time. And I will shut everything down and I will do a squat. Squats are one of my favorite things to do along with the plank. And if anyone's been following me for a while, they know that already. The plank, holding the plank for a minute, if you can, for 2 minutes, it is amazing, right? Across the board and every part of your body. But squats, so important. I wonder, I don't know why I thought you were going to say, but then we decided to change not use the word squats. I came up with a different term for it and then it exploded. But it's like, I would love to know why. Can you ask, is there a way to send a questionnaire? Like, why didn't you want to do this little group class?
I suppose we could ask.
I'm so curious.
I don't know that we'll get an answer because I don't even know that people are aware. We have thousands of classes available, right? So when you say to somebody, why did you choose this one over that one?
Yeah, that's
I don't
tricky.
know that anybody's going to be like, well, I saw the word squat and I don't want to do squats, which I'm sure a part of it, right? But sit down, stand up.
Yeah. And I just, another benefit of squats is, there are so many benefits. I mean, you will be able to sit up and, stand up and sit down so much more easily throughout your life, as you pointed out. But also it's a way of just keeping your lower body stronger. As you mentioned before, muscles, bone density, all of these things are so critical as we get older. So I don't know. I'm a big believer in squats. I love them. And then I sometimes, as you for sure do, of course, add in some weights to make it even more difficult. Some of your followers, some of our listeners may have some limitations, like there might be some chronic pain, although we do know that moving can help a lot of that chronic pain, like arthritis and the like. We know this already, but there might be some other limitations. So how do we kind of motivate people to think about ways that they can walk? I'm not suggesting people who cannot walk, who are possibly in a wheelchair. But for those who just might feel, I've got pain, I don't know if this is a good idea.
So most doctors, and if walking causes you pain, you definitely need to figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
But most doctors now will encourage people to get moving, do what you can. And I'll tell you a story, kind of the moment I learned that lesson, if I may.
Please.
So during the pandemic, my husband and I moved our gym into a back corner of our office. It's tiny, but it does the job. And as you know, because we've talked about it, I have been wrestling with a back injury for 3 years now. And it comes and goes. And if I do something stupid, it flares up and whatever. So I went into the gym one day and I had a plan. And I started my workout and I got through maybe 5 minutes and my back just said, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so frustrated and so angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I stormed out of the office, the gym office, and I had my hand on the door and I threw the door open and I stopped. And my brain said, okay, what can you do? And I was like, crap. Like I had a plan and I had things I wanted to do. I can't do any of those things. Okay, what can I do? And you know what, Barbara? Like there were things I could do.
Right. Maybe you could do those things that you had been planning on doing, but there were things that you could do. And so you did?
I did. I turned around and It's one of those moments that really has shifted my perspective. So for the people who say they can't, they're uncomfortable walking, they don't have an hour to walk, all of the excuses, right? We're stronger than our excuses, but all of the excuses. Do you have access to a pool? Can you walk in water? That takes off doesn't help your bone health because it takes off that resistance, but nevertheless, if you can keep moving, right? Walking in a pool. Can you walk with walking sticks or walking poles? We have a line of walking poles, right? It takes a lot of pressure off of knees and back. I could do a long list, but the question that we have to be asking ourselves is, what can I do?
Right. And also,
and then do that.
Yeah. And then do that. And let's get back to walking. I mean, just like, really, but making sure, I think if there is some pain or there is an injury that's still healing or whatever the situation is, that might be a little tricky, maybe getting the green light from a doctor before you embark. Right. For sure.
Absolutely. But most doctors now, it used to be. So my mom was a professional dancer and she had terrible back problems. And when she threw out her back, whatever that means, right? That's the expression we used to use. I don't even know what that means. But when she would throw out her back, she would take to her bed for days.
Yeah. And now, that's not at all what is recommended. It's moving for sure. And also, this is a great opportunity, I think, to being a runner and a walker and someone who loves squats, as I've said many, many, many times already to the point of boredom. Sorry, everyone, that these things cause arthritis. No, they don't. Every study has shown that not only is that a myth, but that many of these exercises help to strengthen around your knee joint and can help with the arthritis. And I know I'm a living, breathing, walking, talking example of that. I do have arthritis in my left knee and diagnosed easily 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more. And I continue to walk and run. And
I interviewed a physician. She's studied arthritis her entire career. For whatever reason, that is her passion. And one of the things that she said to me is that most physicians in that field hate the expression wear and tear arthritis, which is what people call typically call just that aging. And she said, it's just not so, because that implies that the more you use it, like we're going to use it and wear it out.
Right.
And she's like, it's just not so. So I think we also should advocate for dropping that expression. And to your point, trying to disabuse people of the notion that you're going to wear out your knees, you're going to wear out your hips by using them.
Right. Really, really bad myth. A frequent guest on my show, well, she's been on a few times like you have, is Danielle Friedman. And she wrote a terrific book a few years ago called Let's Get Physical, kind of the history of women and fitness, the Jane Fondas, but going way, way, way back. It's a really fascinating book. And so she's been on, and she now writes a column and has for a while for the New York Times and focusing on fitness. Just today, she has a new article out, and it's really, really good. And in fact, I'll have a link to it in the show notes for everyone. There is a paywall, for the New York Times, but try anyway. But it's all about being motivated. How can you get motivated, stay motivated? And as we know the statistics, here we are. It's the beginning of the year, early on in 2024, and so many people have already kind of given up their goals to, work out or lose weight or whatever. How can we reverse that trend? So she interviewed some terrific people, some really great experts to kind of address all the most common complaints or reasons. It's too hot. It's too cold. I'm too old. I have pain. We've already covered that, kind of the chronic pain. All of these things, I don't have time. The biggest one, of course, is I don't have time. That's the biggest one. I think that's where the exercise snacks really comes into play. And kind of like the blue zones people around the world, how it's just a natural part of their lives. They just incorporate moving into their daily lives. But what are your recommendations? What are your recommendations in your I'm holding it up again because I really want everyone to read it. It's just so
Thank
great.
you.
Congratulations on this book. I
Thank you.
loved
I
it.
appreciate
I
it.
really did. Like I said, I took my pen. I don't know if everyone can see, and I've like circled all kinds of stuff. And
I love that.
that's how you know when a book is really kind of getting to you, when you take out your pen and you start writing in it. You're right. So, by the way, one of the things I circled, which is in your introduction, is the really disconcerting statistic about obesity. It's not good, and it's going higher and just keeps getting worse for all ages, including our youngest people.
Yep.
But we're not going to address that right here, right now. But I think the point is that walking and continuously moving throughout the day will help without a doubt. But getting back to your book, what are some of the things that you learned in doing the research and that you found just kind of, living in your universe of being a running and fitness guru and working with all of your clients and your followers? What do you find really helps people to start and to stay with it?
So, two different things, right? So, getting people off the couch and to start moving. I do think that one of the major things we need to do is convince people that every step counts and every mile matters. And what I hear from women over and over and over again who have difficulty getting started is, I can't do enough for it to matter. Or, why bother? I can't do enough, so why bother? So to
That's a
that,
big one, Joyce. I
yep.
totally get that. And also, I bet if they're not seeing any change, maybe because they haven't given it enough time, that can be demotivating, right? And make you go, well,
Well,
nothing's happening. So,
what's interesting about that
and also, like, what's
is,
you actually talk about in your book? It's like, what do you mean it's not working? What has to work? Explain it.
exactly. So I share this story. I was being interviewed, and the writer interviewing me said, "How much do you have to walk for it
Work.
to
Yeah.
work?"
It was a great story. I
And
circled
I
it.
said, and I said to her, every walk works. Every walk is going to lower your cortisol and improve your cardiovascular system and give you that little dose of happy hormones and all the things. And she said, "Yeah, I get that, but how much do you have to walk before it works?" And we went back and forth because I really was being sort of dumb. Like I wasn't getting it. And then she went like, before it's going to make a difference. And I was like, oh, she just wants to know how much you have to walk to lose weight. Like that's the only metric
That really was
she's
it.
looking
Yep.
at.
Where they
That
can
was it.
see it. But that's how we're programmed. That's why
I
I
know.
get that's why before when you said that, I said, yeah, I get it because that's how we're programmed now. It's going to take like a shift to help people to move away from that way of thinking. But continue.
And I do think we're starting to a little bit. And so what I always encourage people to do is first to start where you are. Well, actually, let me drop a little piece of research on you, which shows that the greatest physical benefits, the most dramatic improvement in health and longevity comes from people who have been mostly sedentary, who get their movement, just walking, up to 4,400 steps a day. That's where they see tremendous benefit.
Yeah.
You are literally, if you are largely sedentary, mostly sedentary, if you start walking 4,000 steps a day, 2,000 steps a day, which is not a lot,
No, it's not.
you are literally going to dramatically reduce your risk of illness and increase your odds of more days on this earth.
Yes. In a good
So,
way.
in a good
In a
way.
good
So,
way.
starting just with putting that out there. So, every step counts. As far as the motivation piece, there are lots of different ways to sort of hack your own motivation, and we can talk about some of them. But the thing that I always start with is what we mean by motivation. Because here's what I think. And I think you and I may have talked about this in the past, because I think that some people think that people who move frequently, regularly, wake up every day and they just can't wait to do it. And I think we've had
Yeah,
this
and no.
conversation because I think you told me that you're one of those. I thought you told me that you're one of those people who's like, I can't wait to run.
That is so funny. You know what it is? Because I'm so routinized that I find life easier if I just don't have to think a lot about some of these
Yeah,
details, truly, because I have so many other more important things I think I want to focus on. Not more important, but just other things that I just am like scheduled. And so it's a schedule. And so I just do it and I don't think a lot about it. But I don't think
exactly.
about it because it's in my,
Right.
literally, it's in all my calendars. I mean, it's non negotiable. And that's really critical. For 15 years now, that's how I've been living. It's just non negotiable unless I have an injury or I'm sick, which we won't get into. But I had a lot of both in the last year, which we won't get into now. But all is well once again. But yeah, so that's really helpful, is to making sure that you put it in your calendar, that it is scheduled. But I also find that, sure, I know all the long-term health benefits, sure, of brain, heart, bones, blah, blah, blah. But there's that short-term benefit.
Yeah, yes,
That's when I
exactly.
say, I really love that. I always come back. I went for a 5-mile run today, and I came back and I felt so good. My cheeks had that little flush. I had like a little hop to my step. And then I took my dog for a walk, which
Uh-huh.
is also scheduled, non negotiable. The poor dog has to go out, or else I'm really have a problem. You see? So, does that work?
Yeah. So this idea of waiting until you feel motivated, it's not going to
No,
happen, right? If you stopped before every run and asked yourself, hey, do I feel like running today? I don't know what percentage of the time, but often you don't actually feel like doing the thing until you're doing the thing.
correct.
So, one piece of advice I often give to people is just start and make yourself a deal. And I don't know if you ever do this with running. I sometimes do this on the occasions that I run, which are pretty rare, but I will run half a mile. And if I really don't feel like it, I'll go home. There are days when the body just wants to go
That's
home.
right.
But more often than not, the motivation comes after you get moving. So don't stop and ask yourself, do I feel like doing the thing? Because chances are you won't. And part of that is we are built, you got to sort of recognize our wiring. We are built to move as little as possible.
To conserve.
We are built to conserve energy, right? Our wiring is such. Bring in as many calories as you possibly can and conserve as much energy because you don't know when you're going to have to outrun the saber-toothed tiger.
I'm going to repeat that because you've said a lot of great things today, as you always do. But that was a gem, and I'm just going to repeat it because it was so important and I think so motivating. The motivation begins when you start moving. That's really so true and so powerful. You're
Yep.
not going to, I mean, that's just the reality. Don't
Yep.
expect yourself to be motivated to get out there and walk for an hour or half an hour, whatever it is, fill in the blank, until you start doing it. And then you're going to start to feel really good about it. And you're right, you always have an out. You always
Yep.
have an out. You can say, you know what? I'm just not there today. Just not feeling it. It's happened.
I did it the other day.
Yeah, me too.
Can I share with you my self-talk for the first 10 minutes of my walks?
Yes, of course.
This does not happen if I'm walking with friends. So another trick to all of this is walk with other people
Yeah,
because
walk
we
and
will show
talk.
up for them, walk and talk. But when I'm walking, and often I need to walk in silence because that's what my brain needs. That's what my soul needs.
Right.
The first 10 minutes of every walk, I think about everything else that I should be doing. I'm simultaneously bored and too busy for it. I worry that I'm too cold. I think I wrote
You
about this in the
did.
book. Like
You
I did,
absolutely wrote about it.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I too hot? Am I going to be too cold? I have other things to do. It is 10 minutes of my brain just ping ponging around all of the reasons that I should not be doing
Right.
this. And then, I mean, it's kind of a joke because it's literally at the 10-minute mark, pretty much invariably. I just settle into a rhythm and all of that goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. I could say that's,
Does that happen when you
yeah,
run?
I could say it's really very similar to when I start running. I can think about, like, I'm always a little grumpy when I start running, like, like I really should be doing that. I've got to
It doesn't
do
feel
that.
good. The first couple of minutes don't
No,
feel
no,
good.
definitely not. And also with running, if you're going to be running, well, if you're going to be running like more than 5 miles, the first 3 miles are really
Oh,
like torturous for mentally and physically in a lot of ways. And then you get into the rhythm, as you just said. And that's true of anything, even if it's like, I'm going to do a little strength training today. It's like, do you really want to be doing strength training? I mean, really, come on, everyone. Maybe some of us, yeah, but really, usually not. I mean, there were so many other things that we could be doing, right? Or want to be doing, really, is more the thing. And then once you start doing it, it's just like you get into a flow. Remember that whole big mental thing back, I think it was in the 70s, Joyce, right? Flow, or was it the 80s? And the whole book came out about it. And like you
yeah.
get into that mental flow, but it's true.
Yeah.
It is true. I get into that. Now, I would like to segue to something you mentioned, which I did want to get to before we close out, is about walking alone. And then, of course, which is so important, sometimes you just need that. You need to do that. And I need to do
Mhm.
that a lot to just kind of settle my mind and, solve problems, review things. I come up with creative ideas that way. I mean, I know in your book, also, you talked about Beethoven and Steve Jobs and like all these brilliant people who walked to solve problems and come up with their best ideas. But also, I wanted to talk about the group walk, how important it is. I mean, when I'm training for the marathon, I do my regular runs by myself, but then once a week, I go for my group run and they get increasingly long. That's the one long
Mhm.
weekly run. And because they can get very boring. Sure, you get into a flow and all that great stuff, right? But like, wow, when you're going up in miles to, 10 miles, 12 miles and more, training for a marathon, it can get really, and I've done it during like the pandemic and stuff. It's not pretty. But the group runs or the group walks, how wonderful. And you do offer tips in your book, like bring a funny story, bring a recipe. Talk to us about that and how you've personally benefited from your group walks, mostly with girlfriends.
Yeah, I actually tried to start a group. And I kind of feel like if I could do it, it must be really hard to do. Of course, there's a ton of research out there that shows that when you're a part of a group, be it walking or running, you continue to show up. And it's not just that. You look at it in so many different aspects and elements of our life and our work experience. Being part of a community
Oh,
motivates and inspires us, and we
absolutely.
keep going. So the question becomes a little bit around how do you build that for yourself? And I will say, on the one hand, it's not easy. On the one hand, it's really easy. This also just came up in a conversation with somebody in the 99 Walks community today, actually. When my son was really young, he was about 6, we were at this outdoor at the back of our local coffee shop. They had music and it was a beautiful day and they had created a little garden and we were there, listening to the music, talking to friends. And our kid at the time, 6, was doing that thing that like 6-year-olds do when they sit on the chair and like their feet go back and
Yeah.
forth because they're bored.
Yes. I still do that.
So there were 2 other little boys who were playing catch on the other side of the yard. And I said to my son, "Hey, Mason, go over there and see if they want to play with you." And he said, "What do I say? How do I do that?" And I said, "Just walk over and say, 'Hi, I'm Mason. Do you want to play?'" And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he was kind of like a game kid. And he literally walked over to these two kids and said, "Hi, I'm Mason. Do you want to play?" And 2 hours later, we had to drag him away, right?
So great.
So the moral of the story is, "Hey, Susie, do you want to go for a walk on Tuesday?" You don't
Absolutely.
ask, you don't get, right? We've just got to be willing to put ourselves out there and go first. And chances are 50-50 that Susie may say yes and Susie may say no.
Right.
And if she says no, then just ask Nancy. I find it's a lot less intimidating to invite somebody to meet you for a walk than it is to invite them like to your home for dinner.
Right. Or even to
Right?
go
That's
for a
another,
coffee. I mean, yeah, you can sit down and do a coffee, but I'm a big believer, like you are, in the walk and talk. I am also a huge believer, and we did talk about this the last time you were on, how back when I was in the business world and, way before the pandemic and going to an office and had employees and blah, 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 that if there was a difficult conversation that
yeah,
could be tense at times, I remember always taking that person or those people out for a walk and discussing it. So first, you're not making eye contact, which I think
mhm.
really makes it easier to say certain things if there's something's critical. And it's easier to connect, I think, with people up front. So it's more gradual, it seems to me, in building a relationship, especially if it's a new friendship. I can't say enough good things about it. I agree completely. It's a wonderful thing.
It also goes to what we were talking about earlier, which is this idea of making movement just part of your life. Sure, you could go for a coffee date and now you're both going to sit and drink
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah.
Or you can get half an hour of easy movement into your
Yeah.
day.
What I do when I go back and forth between New York and Virginia. And when I'm in New York, I want to catch up. I mean, really, most of my friends are there. And when I want to catch up with people, I'll very often say, hey, let's just go for a walk in Central Park. Let's just like meet up at that spot, that bench, and we'll take a walk around
Yeah.
and that's what we do. And that's a regular thing for me. It's just a wonderful thing. And I really hope that people embrace that idea. Also, there were so many, I was thinking about this while reading your book. And when I got to the part about going with a group, and there were so many book clubs out there. Why don't people do this more often? Read the book and discuss it on a walk. Like instead of
Mhm.
gathering and drinking wine or however people do it in someone's home, which is also fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it would be so nice to let's now all go for a walk and talk about the book with somebody leading it, like, how they rotate leaders, I guess. There are so many ways, I think is the point, right, Joyce? So many ways to incorporate moving into your life that can also be social and fun and play. And I think that's another
Yes.
motivating thing. I think that, and this was one of the experts in Danielle Friedman's, who I mentioned before, her article in the New York Times today, is that one of the experts did say that a great motivator is to just make it fun. This doesn't all have to be like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I've got to run 5 miles. It can be fun.
Hence pickleball.
Yes, that's right. Oh my gosh. Joyce, this has been so much fun. As always, you will be back again because,
Thank
this is
you.
like a regular thing now. But I really want to know, we covered so many things. And like you and I both agree, we don't want to overwhelm anybody. So why don't you just kind of cull from everything we talked about? What are your 3 biggest takeaways, do you think, from our conversation today that the Age Better audience will remember or should remember?
Barbara, can I just leave with one? Because it's only one that really
Yeah, for
matters.
sure.
Every step counts. Don't wait until you have an hour. Don't wait until the weather is perfect. Don't think that you have to do A, B, and C to bother. Just lace up your sneakers and walk out the door. And that's the beauty. That's why I'm such an advocate for walking. Yes, I love all the other things, but gosh, this one is so simple.
It's simple. Yeah, it's simple. Maybe some days it's not easy for whatever reason, but it's a simple, simple concept that I really hope everyone embraces more of. Joyce, thank you so much. So much fun.
Always so much fun and such a pleasure. Thank you.
And everyone, there will be links, as I said, to Joyce's new book and to 99 Walks and to all of the other stuff that she and her husband is doing. And also, I just want to tell you that next week will be the week of Valentine's Day, which, we all know what Valentine's Day is, of course, but I also like to think of it as the time when we can love ourselves a heck of a lot more, which is why conversations like this with Joyce is so important, because this is a way of loving yourself more by taking better care of yourself and just giving yourself all of this wonderful information and using it. But I just want to share with you that the next week's episode is going to be, it's actually 2 parts, next week and the week after. Cosmo. Remember Cosmo? We all read Cosmo. Is that like kind of our guide to sex in our younger days? Well, they've come out with a special section, believe digital only, called Sex After 60. And it is amazing, with about 8 or 9 different articles. But the main feature, the writer of the main feature, is going to be my guest next week, talking about sex after 60. And then the week after that will be another writer, and she's also a sex expert. And she and I, Joan Price, and I will be talking about sex toys and the best ones that for women over 60 and 50 and 70. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. All about loving yourself more. Hey, okay?
I am tuning in.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, bye everyone. Joyce, thank you again, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.